All right, hello, it is Friday, and welcome to the Carl Jackson Show podcast, your daily dose of objective truth in a world of confusion and lies. We are going to do an In Case You Missed It show today with headlines, including the car that blew up on the Gay Bridge in Niagara Falls, pro-Hamas protesters at the Macy Thanksgiving Day Parade. I want to cover that. New York City Mayor Eric Adams finds himself in more legal trouble because the Negroes spoke out against the Biden administration, and I think they're going to punish him as a result of it. Also, the big story of the day is that some Israeli hostages have been released. Kathy Hochul has been given new powers in New York that everyone should be concerned about. And Bob Van Der Plaats has endorsed DeSantis in Iowa. This is a big story that no one wants to cover. We're going to cover it here. I'll tell you why it's a big deal, on top of Trump having his rally in Iowa just last night. All right, so guys, appreciate you tuning in. I hope that you had an amazing Thanksgiving. I do believe that we still have a lot to be thankful for. We still have a country that we can fight for. We still have a roadmap, if you will, and our Declaration of Independence and our Constitution to revert back to when we get off course. So, Lord willing, we will get back on track, and we are getting back on track. And a lot of that is going to be before the elections and in our own personal lives, frankly, and our faith relationship with God and our adherence to the Constitution itself. And obviously, we're going to have to throw some elbows, however, leading up to 2024 in order to get this country back. So I just want to go over these stories really quick here. I wanted to make sure that I brought these stories to you because I know a lot of you have been busy and some of you may have heard of the stories, but I just want to give you the follow-up. Let's start here. Let's talk about the story of the car that blew up on the Gay Bridge. And sorry. I'm being facetious. It's all Gabe's fault. But it was the Rainbow Bridge. It is. I thought it was a pretty good and clever idea, so I went ahead and rolled with it. So any of you that are upset, please send your emails to Gabe at so anyway, all right. So let's just follow up on this story because it became somewhat of a nothing burger, although a very tragic story for the couple that was involved, and it was a husband and wife couple. Let me make sure I'm popping up the right story here. So basically this car exploded, and from the details that have begun to emerge from the story is this couple, they were actually sounds like they were on the U.S. side because there were reports that they were on the Canadian side. There were reports coming into the U.S. There were reports that there may have been a second car involved. As far as we know, none of that is true. The FBI has now turned the case completely over to local law enforcement, Niagara Falls police, and all this kind of stuff, New York police, because what happened, they're not exactly sure how it happened, but it was a couple, husband and wife, that were in their 50s. They were driving an older model Bentley. Very nice car, very expensive car. They don't know if something weird happened with the car. There's reports that they stopped at a 7-Eleven on the American side, the U.S. side, before heading into Canada. They were going to head to a casino from what people could gather, but now there's not even confirmation if they stopped at this 7-Eleven. But what they have figured out, it's a couple business owners in New York that worked or owned some businesses in New York. Either the car lost control or they were speeding wrong side of the road. The car hits near the border crossing right at it. So this couple ended up, just going airborne and literally, hit the ground. The car went into flames. It's absolutely insane. There are hardly any marks left besides the burn marks that were left on the Rainbow Bridge, aka the Gay Bridge, on Niagara Street, apparently. So anyway, pretty insane crash, but there doesn't appear to be any link to terrorism. But let me tell you why everybody this is our initial thought. And honestly, there's no reason, I'm sorry, why we shouldn't be concerned about terrorism. Guys, we have a wide open border. I saw people online right away, reacting to it, or leftists reacting to it after more news started to emerge about what had really taken place, who was involved, so on, etc. And I saw some people, see, there you go, these radical right wingers are trying to get people up in arms. I mean, this is just common sense. And honestly, I don't believe the leftists when they say they weren't up in arms or that they weren't concerned. I think our initial reaction, and I don't believe the left wants to admit it, is that when we hear something like this, I think instinctively, I think all Americans think terrorist attack. I don't believe the people that say they don't. I really don't. I really don't. Because initially I was like, was that a terrorist attack? I will wait and find out. But was that a terrorist attack? That was the initial thought in my mind that crossed my mind. Now, I'm glad to hear that wasn't the case. I'm sorry for the couple that lost their lives. Obviously, people have lost some family members, and employees have lost some bosses or employers or what have you, and whatever other mark they're going to leave or they left behind. Such a sad story. But thank God it wasn't a terrorist attack. But I don't fault anybody for having an initial reaction, whether or not that was a terrorist attack, simply because of our open borders. And we see what's happening in the Middle East. The Middle East is on fire. You can look at stories like this is a video. If I had an amazing engineer instead of a low budget engineer, but if I had a really amazing engineer, he would have went ahead and found this video and but anyway, we look at America, in my opinion, is in danger because we've got a bunch of knuckleheads, a bunch of kids that don't understand what real terrorism is. They've been taught that the real terrorists are white Christian males. They've been taught that real terrorists are Republicans. They've been taught that real terrorists or domestic terrorists are MAGA supporters, and they don't know what real terrorists look like. They don't know how real terrorists behave. They don't know what real terrorists say. And that is exactly why they fell for that nonsense when Xi Jinping was in the country last week in San Francisco, when Gavin Newsom was bending the knee and kissing that booty. That's why they fought for this stuff. When those letters of Osama bin Laden were released from way back when, you and I, those of us that have actually experienced a terrorist attack on U.S. soil before a lot of these kids that are still wet behind the ears were even born, we look at that stuff, or they're too young to understand. We look at that stuff and we're like, this is all propaganda. This is easily discernible. We know exactly what this is. That isn't the case with a lot of these youngsters that have grown up after in the post 9/11 America, where you have literally a corrupt DOJ, a corrupt FBI that are without a mission. And since we started eliminating or eradicating terrorists on our own soil, they had to justify their jobs, and now they started creating these new domestic terrorists. Oh, white nationalists. Nobody's afraid of white nationalists. You can't find any place in the United States where anybody is actually terrified of being, of a terrorist attack by white nationalists or white supremacists. It's so idiotic, but it doesn't matter. The people believe it. They've been brainwashed. So many of them have been brainwashed. Hence the protesters that blocked the Macy's Thanksgiving Day parade. Now, these people had on white uniforms and splashed flake blood all over themselves. What these idiots don't realize is that Hamas would create real blood and their blood. Because if they don't bow down to Allah, Hamas would kill them. And frankly, perhaps even if they did, they don't understand that these Hamas terrorists would kill even Muslims that don't obey them to the extent that they want. So, and I really believe there needs to be major ramifications. I'm so sick of and tired of these people that are allowed to sit in streets and highways. I love one thing that Governor Ron DeSantis did here in the state of Florida during the BLM, the George Floyd riots, basically George Floyd, BLM, Antifa riots. And when you were seeing on news stories in places across the country, Los Angeles, New York and such, where people were literally blocking roads, highways, so on, etc., these BLM protesters and rioters, people's lives were in danger. They were stopping cars, people got beat up, and so on, etc. One of the things that DeSantis did that I absolutely loved, and our legislators followed up on or followed through on, was, listen, if you're in the road, if you're in the middle of a highway, I'm sorry, it's not a crime to run your behind over or defend your life, because obviously you're threatening the lives of others. So I'm sorry, these people get in the middle of the road, they should be a speed bump. That's the way that I feel. I'm so sick and tired of this. There needs to be harsh penalties to stop this nonsense. Thoroughfares, freeways, toll roads, those are for vehicles. They are not there for people to sit down in the middle of them. And that includes, the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which I don't even watch anymore because because it's woke. So I don't even watch that anymore. Now, here's another story that you may have missed out on. Now, I believe this is Go Get a Negro or Go Destroy a Negro. That's what I'm calling this story. Go Destroy a Negro. So let me bring you the story if I have it. Okay, here it is. This from the New York Post. I think this is a very important story because the left does not tolerate dissent, and that includes from their own. Now, this is the latest story. You have the New York City Mayor Eric Adams. He finds himself in legal trouble yet again. Now, this time, Eric Adams is being sued for sexually assaulting a woman in 1993. This according to an accuser. Now, you guys may know that he is under investigation. Mayor Eric Adams is. He was by the FBI. That's Barack Obama. Well, Barack Obama's and Joe Biden's DOJ, essentially, due to some alleged campaign fraud where he may or may have not received illegal donations from some Turkish donors or something to that effect. So that has come up. You don't think, if that is true, that the FBI didn't know about that? So and he's not getting the money that he wants or needs, Mayor Eric Adams is, to deal with all of those illegal aliens inside of New York. He's not getting that money. So what has he had to do? He's had to cut policing, as if policing wasn't bad enough in the state of or in the city of New York. He's got to cut back even more. So this is what they're forcing him to do, instead of giving him any type of money whatsoever. But you had that first case where, again, it is alleged that he may have illegally taken some campaign money. Now you have this. Again, this from the New York Post. Eric Adams sued for sexually assaulting a woman in 1993. This is 30 years ago, folks, if this is true. So Mayor Eric Adams, according to the column, has been accused of sexually assaulting a woman in 93 in a lawsuit seeking at least 5 million buckaroonies, filed just before the deadline for the Adult Survivors Act. So right before the deadline. And I'm not defending this guy one iota. I don't know if this story is true or not. But what seems suspicious to me is that all of a sudden these stories about Mayor Eric Adams start to emerge, and he's been one of the most vocal Democrats when it comes to this issue of illegal immigration. They need Democrats to get in line, to shut up and get in line. For those of you that don't understand, this is how the Democrat Party has always been. It doesn't matter if you're a prominent black, politician in the United States. If you're a Democrat, you're going to shut up and get in line. Even if your boss is an old white dementia patient, you're going to shut up and you're going to get in line. You're going to toe the line. And that's exactly what's happening, in my opinion, with Mayor Eric Adams. Now, whether or not these allegations are true, that's yet to be seen. We will find out. But I find it very suspicious that literally 30 years, right when the time to be able to prosecute upon over this case runs out, the statute of limitations, all of a sudden it pops up. The article goes on. The accuser, whom the Post is not identifying because of the nature of the allegation, named Adams as a defendant along with the New York PD's Transit Bureau and Guardian Association in a lawsuit that was filed late Wednesday. So just before Thanksgiving Day. That would make it extremely hard to sleep easy and get the proper rest that you need for Thanksgiving. Now, speaking of good rest, guys, let me talk to you about MyPillow.com and Mike Lindell with MyPillow.com. Mike Lindell is MyPillow.com is a sponsor of this program. Guys, in order for me to be able to bring you this podcast, I cannot do it without your viewership, and I cannot do it without sponsorship. We're headed into the Christmas season. As a matter of fact, a window I may do a little bit of Christmas shopping. Now, granted, it's not going to be as big as it was because let's be real, by inflation. All right, so, but Mike Lindell is offering some amazing deals at mypillow.com. All you have to do is go to mypillow.com, click on that radio podcast square at the top of the page, enter my name. Guys, there are some products that are over 60% off. So just enter my name or give them a call, 800-858-0263. Browse the website, mypillow.com, 10-year warranty, 60-day money-back guarantee. You're helping to keep jobs right here in America. Products made in the USA. MyPillow.com, promo code Carl. All right, now getting back to this story. So Adams was a New York police, an NYPD officer at the time, back in '93, and the filing said that the woman that is accusing him of the sexual assault also worked for the city at the time. According to the summary or the summons, a plaintiff, quote, it says here, plaintiff was sexually assaulted by defendant Eric Adams in New York in '93, while the both worked for the city of New York. The following alleges sexual assault, battery, and employment discrimination on the basis of the plaintiff's gender and sex. What? Aren't they the same thing? All right, retaliation, hostile work environment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress, and seeks damages no less than $5 million along with attorney's fees. Attempts to reach the accuser were not immediately successful by the New York Post. All right. So anyway, this will be interesting. Adams addressed the lawsuit before one of his Thanksgiving arrangements, saying it did not happen. And I'm quoting, "That's not who I am. That's not who I am in my professional life. It's just something that never took place." Close quote. City Hall was also quick to deny the allegations, which is interesting to me. And City Hall, here's what they had to say. The mayor does not know who this person is, close quote. If they ever met, he doesn't recall it, but he would never do anything to physically harm another person, and vigorously denies any such claim. You know who comes to mind? The former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. They didn't get him out of office. You think about that. Think about that, Gabe. They didn't get him out of office because of all the people that he was able to, nix. All right, let's put it that way. Nix with that jab. They got him out of office because he was a little playboy. And so maybe this is a warning shot to Mayor Eric Adams. Hey, man, you better shut up and you better get in line, Negro. I really believe that's what's happening. You better get in line. All right, now, here's a very big story that I want to get to that I think is extremely important, perhaps one of the biggest stories in the entire United States of America, because it flips the Constitution on its head. And frankly, I've not heard enough people talking about it, and I probably should have just done a deep dive on this one particular subject. But for the sake of time and just wanting to bring you up to speed, let me just read from a little bit from this column. So, the mayor of New York, Kathy Hochul, or the nanny of New York, as I call her. So this fascist, and I don't say that to be hyperbolic. New York is a fascist state. New York is a fascist state. All right. So this is from a gentleman by the name of David Icke, I believe. But I first read it in New York Post, but for whatever reason, I went back to try to find the column, and I could not find it so easily. So anyway, but here it is. All right, so Hochul's quarantine camp regulation is reinstated by an appeals court in New York. Did you hear that? A quarantine camp that the governor wants, the nanny of New York, Kathy Hochul. So the story goes as such. New York Governor Kathy Hochul's quarantine camp regulation that would allow, listen to this, the seizure and indefinite detention of anyone suspected of exposure to a communicable disease was restored on Friday by a decision of the New York Appellate Division's 4th Judicial Department. I hope this finds its way to the Supreme Court. The Appellate Division overturned a lower court's decision issued in July by Judge Ronald Plotz, who had voided the governor's rule. The Appellate Division panel of judges asserted that the plaintiffs several current and former New York State legislators and a citizens group did not have legal standing to sue the state, arguing that none of the plaintiffs had sustained personal injury as a result of the regulation. So this chick wants to build basically a concentration camp for people that don't obey her orders during like a COVID lockdown, if you will. And because that camp wasn't built, I guess, and so they didn't suffer as a result of not having a camp up, they have no standing in the court. Do you understand what's happening in the United States of America? Guys, this is not the same United States of America. This isn't the same United States of America as it was in 2000, 2010, 2020, 2022. This is not the same United States. This is a full-out fascist move. New York and California have moved so far to the left. They are not, frankly, they're not American states. And they are, right, in practicality, in legality, they're not in ideology. This is really scary. The appellate division panel of judges asserted, okay, I already read that. The panel dodged the substantive constitutional issues raised by the plaintiffs and affirmed by the lower court Hochul's regulation radically diverges from the written letter of the law regarding quarantines to such an extent that the plaintiffs argue that the regulation amounts to any entirely, new law imposed by the governor without action by the legislature. So arbitrarily, this chick can say, listen, anyone not following regulations, if we think you have COVID or something like that, if you don't do exactly what the state says, we can throw you behind bars. That's New York. Get out. Get out. Unless you're a commie. If you're a commie and you vote Democrat, please stay. You'll feel right at home. But if you love freedom, you better get out. These cities, in my opinion, are going to get a lot worse before they get better. Because the only people there are the people that are dependent and are dependent on the government, in my opinion, or just in love with government or just clueless. Get out, get out, get out. That is a huge warning shot. Okay, now here's another big deal. Now I wanted to bring this to, I don't know if let me see if I can find something real quick. Trump had a rally in Iowa. I just want to bring up some of the points that he did because they're battling out in Iowa. I don't believe the polls in Iowa, and I don't give a flip who you're for. If you're for Trump or DeSantis, whatever. But I don't believe the polls that Trump is leading. First of all, I don't believe the national polls because I just don't believe that most people are paying attention or give a flip. Also, national polls, I don't take them seriously because once races and primaries and caucuses begin to happen, you start seeing numbers shift. A lot of the polls are using registered voters as opposed to likely voters, although I am starting to see a shift with likely voters. So my argument isn't that Trump doesn't have a lead. He does. I don't believe they're nearly as big as they as many proclaim they are. I just don't. And I'm not going to sit here and lie to you just to grift. I'm not going to do it. I'm sorry. I'm going to tell you the truth. I always believe that there should be a primary. I believe that's the American way. Even though I like Trump, I think there should be a primary because I believe that iron sharpens iron. I think it's as simple as that. There's some things that I think DeSantis would do better than Trump. There's some things that I think Trump would do better than DeSantis. But what I wanted to see was a real primary. And that way, even if Trump wins, he takes on these issues, right? Because he's held accountable for certain things. But when you let somebody just skate, that doesn't happen. And who loses? You. Now, that's separate, in my opinion, from the persecution of Donald Trump. But I do believe that has to be handled, and the only way that can be handled is if I believe either Trump or DeSantis gets in office. And yes, I believe DeSantis would do that too. I just think he's a crappy campaigner. It's sad, but it's true. Great governor. I think he would make a great president. Crappy campaigner. And when you're a crappy campaigner, it makes it a lot harder to get into office. That's just the way that it is. Trump is very unique in the way that he talks. We haven't seen anybody like it. I liken it based upon what I've read to not FDR, but Teddy Roosevelt. He's that type of figure, comes on once in a century. But when it comes to sheer governance, listen, I think Trump would do the job. I think DeSantis would do the job. And then you have 1 year or 1 term versus 2 terms. And I believe that comes out to be the argument. But anyway, here's what I want to go over. These are 6 takeaways from Trump's rally. And then I wanted to have video prepared for you, but for whatever reason, I can't find this video of Bob Van Der Plaats endorsing DeSantis. And I'm sorry, listen, guys, I'm on the right. I know a lot of people listening to this podcast, maybe a few Democrats might listen. But the truth of the matter is, there's been some very nasty things said about Bob Van Der Plaats. Bob Van Der Plaats is a good, godly man. He didn't buy off or pay off any. There's some secular conservatives that are fake conservatives or fake Christians in the conservative movement, just bashing people based upon endorsements. To me, that's crazy. Because I'm like, not only do we need to win, in my opinion, in 2024, I think we need to win for the next 20 years. And I don't think you do that when instead of talking about policy and beating people up on policy, you just beat them up for the sake of beating them up, and you beat up people in your own movement. It's gotten so disgusting. I absolutely hate this primary season. And I love politics. I love primaries. It's like the Super Bowl for me in the primary season. This one I can't stand. And I'm quite frankly ready for it to be over. But anyway, that's my job, and I'm going to continue bringing you the truth. But here's some takeaways real quick from Trump's rally in Iowa. And again, I don't have any audio for you. I'm sure there's plenty of it out there. I wish I would have gotten it, but I'm a slacker. I wanted to make sure that I put this, in case you missed it, show together for you. But the outrageous attempt at disenfranchising the former president. Both of the cases in Colorado. Is it Colorado? Basically, they're trying to get Trump off the ballot. In Colorado, those cases have fallen apart. Thank God, even the liberal justices. One in Colorado, Judge Sarah Wallace, said in her opinion that Trump participated in insurrection, which is complete and utter nonsense. But at least she came to the right conclusion, all right? She said it did not meet the requirements needed to remove him from the ballot. So judges in both Minnesota and Michigan have said the same. So that isn't an issue at this point, thank God. Trump was, he mentioned, this is something only Trump would do. He talked about how this disease is named after him, this Trump derangement syndrome. He's right about that. He talked about his political enemies and even joked that there is the disease named for him, discussing, quote, every sane person without what they call Trump derangement syndrome. He said, you know what that is. It's a great honor. I had a disease named after me, Trump derangement syndrome. He said, for 4 straight years, he kept America safe. I kept Israel safe. I kept Ukraine safe. And I kept the world safe. All right. That's a good argument on his part. Weak on China. He's claimed that Biden is weak on China. We all know this to be true. The meetings, Xi Jinping's meeting with Joe Biden. I mean, this is a guy that literally transversed the United States with spy balloons, looking at our military supply, our military equipment, our military installations, so on, etc. And then we don't shoot the balloon down until it's done whatever they needed to do, got all the information they needed to gather, and then we shoot it down in the Atlantic Ocean after China's done. Yeah, and then we bend the knee to China. I mean, Gavin Newsom literally cleaned up the streets. I still don't know what he did with the homeless. The homeless may still be hiding somewhere. I have no idea. But cleaned up the poop off the streets, the drugs, and everything else in San Francisco. They did it within a matter of days. And yet the residents of San Francisco have been begging for this for, a decade? It just shows you how little the Democrat Party cares about you. If you're in San Francisco, if you had any common sense, you would never vote Democrat again. But I suspect that there's not a whole lot of common sense out there. Trump said that out of respect for the office of the presidency, he didn't go after Biden right away. When he first became president, he wanted to hold back his criticism. And I think that is good on his part. That's respectful. That's what most presidents try to do. Barack Obama didn't do it. He's disdainful. But Trump tried to do it but he said, quote, once I got indicted the first time, though, I said, now the gloves are off. And I don't blame him for that, because out of respect for the office of the presidency, he said, I never hit him this hard. But he said, but now I say it. He's the most incompetent president we've ever had. He's the worst president we've ever had, and he's a total crook. He couldn't be more right in every sense of those words. The Biden trade policy, he said, is dead on day one. He vowed to scrap the Biden administration push to enter the TPP trade agreement, and that includes the United States as well as several Asian countries, but not China. Also, the 6th takeaway, Your Excellency had tipped to the Daily Signal, by the way. At the Iowa rally, Trump referenced his 2020 meeting with the Taliban leader, Abdul Ghani Baradar. I don't know how to pronounce that last name, Baradar, who serves as the group's chief negotiator and also goes by Mullah Baradar. He said, "May I ask you a question, Your Excellency?" He called me Your Excellency. Trump said, "I wonder if he calls Biden Your Excellency." It's honestly a good question. Trump also talked about the failure of Biden's exit from Afghanistan. They don't want to bring it up, the fake news anymore, but how about the most embarrassing time in history of the country, which is Afghanistan? And I am concerned about this because I don't hear Republicans litigating this. And frankly, I don't hear Trump even litigating this point enough. And I really do believe that it is important for Trump, DeSantis even, to talk policy, to talk about Biden and Biden's disaster. I think we've spent way too much time focused on each other in this primary instead of going after Biden, the man that is literally destroying the United States as we know it. But anyway, those are takeaways from the Trump rally. Now, in Iowa, which is very important because my understanding of the last thing that I read, now the numbers may have changed, but essentially, now listen to this. Let me clarify this. Trump has the lead, all right, from all indications in the polls. However, when it comes to my first and second pick, Trump and DeSantis are tied. 67% say of people out there say, all right, Trump is my first pick, but DeSantis is my second pick. Whereas, even though there's a higher percentage of people that say Trump is my first pick, they're still tied at 67. Where DeSantis supporters say, okay, DeSantis obviously is my first pick. Trump is my second pick. So they're tied in that number. They're not tied in the amount of people that say initially Trump is my first pick, DeSantis is my first pick. Trump has a lead there. He doesn't have a 40-point lead. He doesn't have a 30-point lead. He doesn't have a 20-point lead. That's why I'm saying these polls are total BS. Now, maybe on that day when people show up, as they show up for these rallies, nobody can bring Trump to a rally. Maybe that'll be the case. And if Trump wins Iowa, I think it's over for everybody else. However, if DeSantis were to win Iowa or come in a very close second, I personally think he needs to win it. But if he comes in a very close second where Nikki Haley would bow out, but I don't think she will, because I honestly think Nikki Haley is running to be Trump's VP, or the Chris Christie's of the world. Then maybe DeSantis will get a one-on-one, but without a one-on-one, I just don't see you beating Trump. If he does get a one-on-one, then I think Trump, regardless of how you feel, I'm just telling you the facts, I think he could be beat because his unfavorables, even though his polls are really high amongst the most ardent supporters, his favorables or unfavorables, I forget which one, are very high, which aren't good for any candidate. But that's where you are. And I think that's why Bob Van Der Plaats came out and made a decision. Now, there's people that are saying Bob Van Der Plaats is paid off. Look, DeSantis campaign paid him $95,000. I forget the name of, I think it's Family Leaders or something like that. But the guy is a major Christian in Iowa. He puts on these forms. And honestly, for anybody that's been involved in politics, done any type of organizing or volunteered, you'll have Lincoln Day dinners, or you'll have dinners for campaigns, so on, etc. And to be a part of that dinner so that they can pay for the festivities, so that they can pay for the food, so that they can pay for guests and stuff like that, you pay a fee. And it's as simple as that. So I hate the fact that Republicans are willing to wage psyops against you to say that Bob Van Der Plaats is crooked and he took money from DeSantis' campaign. Did he take money from Rick Santorum? Did he take money from Mike Huckabee? Did he take money from Trump? Was he bought off by Trump in 2016 when Trump gave to his organization? Trump was just getting into the political process. This is the stuff that I hate about this, because there's a lot of lies going on by grifters inside of the movement that are looking for a paycheck, and instead of that want to save their paycheck instead of save America. I sadly believe that. Even some of the people that I respected the most, that I thought they were the most conservative, as I figure out who the grifters are, the ones that are in it for themselves and not necessarily the country, while putting on the front that they're for the country and not for themselves, there's a lot of them, guys. There's a lot of them. I don't trust any of these fools hardly anymore. I really don't. I really don't. This is why I like a lot of the old school fools that are straight up. Oh, excuse me. That's why I like a lot of the old school guys that are still on radio, because they've been in the fight for so long. They've just been around for so long. Now, here's so the Bob Van Der Plaats endorsement of Ron DeSantis is huge. All right, ever since he's endorsed, whoever he's endorsed. Now, this is just Iowa. All right, this is just Iowa. But wherever he's endorsed in Iowa, they've managed to win. All right, so again, Mike Huckabee took the world by storm. Rick Santorum beat Mitt Romney. You know, people didn't see that coming. You had Ted Cruz that beat Trump. People didn't see that coming. Now, none of these people went on to win the presidency. So let me just make that loud and clear. But they also never got the one. They never got the one-on-ones. Like, they won Iowa, but too many people stayed in the race. It's the same thing that Mitt Romney did with the rest of the field. The rest of the field kept going after each other instead of going after Romney. He wins. It's weird. McCain, basically the same thing. So anyway, it is what it is, but that's where we are. But the Van Der Plaats endorsement is a big deal because, and I really think this is why there's so much nastiness between the Trump and DeSantis campaign. But the Van Der Plaats endorsement is a big deal simply because if DeSantis were to win Iowa, I think it changes the narrative that Trump is invincible with so few people in the race. And I know that's what Trump is concerned about. So I know, listen, this is a primary. I expect them to do battle. And they should do battle because they're fighting for you. So they should battle it out. But what I don't like is when you don't talk about policy. Because in the end, if you don't tell us exactly what you're going to do, and I'm sorry, 2016 is not 2024. There's been so much damage done to this country in a few short years by Biden. Honestly, it's going to take a Herculean task, even by Trump, to turn things around, because he's not coming in with a. We now have an economy that is just, in shambles. Now, I do think that it can come back to some degree simply if Biden were to lose, because I think people in the markets as well would react to that, and people would be like, "Phew, finally, this guy is gone." I think just based upon that. And now we know that oil is traded on the futures market and bought and sold on the futures market. Hey, we're going to drill. We're going to drill, baby, drill. You're going to see the price of gasoline and fuel go down. That's going to help all around groceries, transportation, you name it. That's going to make things more affordable. So in that sense, yes. But we need these things to last. We need these things to stick. So along with legislation, there's got to be cultural battles. We got to start talking about why fossil fuels are good for everyone, why they're moral, cheap, and safe, or hydrogen. You know what I'm saying? Going to these types of things, nuclear power, as opposed to these EVs that are complete and utter fraud, only designed to get China rich and to make people feel better about themselves. We got to start having these cultural arguments too. Otherwise, we're not going to get legislation that we need passed, because we see what happened with executive orders. Trump got one major piece of legislation done, and that was the Tax Cuts Jobs Act that he rolled out with Paul Ryan, the Rhino Paul Ryan, back in the day. But that became law, even though it was temporary, sadly, which is the dumbest thing ever. But anyway, that became law temporarily. And so, man, that just caused the market to skyrocket. People were like, wow, finally a government that's down for capitalism in the United States of America. And then we got some control of the border, but we never got any legislation. We got Remain in Mexico policy. This was all due to COVID. But before, Trump's first years on the border were not good. There were too many, I want to say, I hate using the term, but rhino Republicans. It's simply because I think Republicans are Republicans. I just think a lot of people in Washington, D.C., I mean, literally 90% of them, I just think they're fake. I just think they're in it for a paycheck. I think they're in it for survival. Maybe a lot of them go there with good intentions, and it just doesn't work out. But we need legislation. Appreciate Remain in Mexico. We need a wall. not 40 miles being built. We need a wall, the whole stretch, the stretch of the entire border. I'm sorry. I like DeSantis's. Listen, we're going to make the cartels like a, enemy combatant, basically. We're going to be able to smoke those fools. That's the stuff that I like. All right. But this Bob Van Der Plaats deal is a huge deal because, again, if Christians are what put Trump over the top in those initial races. So if Christians do that for DeSantis, again, it knocks out that that Trump is invincible, he's inevitable, and that will be very hard for the Trump campaign. So I think that's why they are fighting so, just dirty and hard to make sure that they win Iowa. Because if Trump wins Iowa, I think the race is over. Just being honest with you, all right? If he doesn't win, then you know what? Then you've got a primary on your hand. So I just want to make sure that I've covered everything with you. Honestly, I think the biggest story is the story with Kathy Hochul. I know nobody's talking about that, but New York is officially fascist. The governor, without the help of the legislature, can now say, oh, you're not following my quarantine orders? Lock them up and throw away the key. Guys, it doesn't get any more fascist than that. Oh, I'm sorry. This is a huge story. Thank you, Gabe. Gabe is like, wait, moron, I've got this video for you. All right, so this is the last story that we'll end with, and obviously this is a feel-good story, but there's still much more work to do. I can't believe I almost signed off. I cannot believe it. Man, Gabe, you actually earned your paycheck today. Probably the first time, but Gabe earned his paycheck today by putting this picture up. So let's play this video, and here's what's happening here. There have been some hostages that have been released. Man, Gabe, good Lord, thank you so much. There have been some hostages that have been released, and let me give you the numbers here. I was pulling it up earlier, and Gabe, if you want, just go ahead and run the video, and I will, so that the people can check it out. And by the way, please subscribe to my podcast wherever you go to get your podcast. I'm on Apple, Google, Spotify, YouTube, and Rumble. When you're on YouTube and Rumble, if you would help us out, is it reviewing it, Gabe? You review it. I believe it's review it. Give us the highest rating possible. I think it's a 5. Subscribe, like it, share it. That's going to help us move up the charts. We would comment. We would sincerely appreciate that. All of that stuff helps. That'll help give us some exposure. And frankly, as much as it's hard for me to ask you to do this stuff, I'm just being real. It's not my personality, but this isn't radio. So I've got to learn to build podcasting the same way that I did when I was just exclusively on radio. So if you guys could help me out, I would sincerely appreciate that. All right, in all things social media, I'm on Instagram, if you could find me there. I'm on Twitter. I probably interact the most on both Twitter and Instagram at The Carl Jackson Show. Gabe, let's go ahead and roll the video. This is video of hostages actually being released. So as he rolls the video, I'll just read you some of the reports. You have 13 Israeli women and children that have been taken hostage by Hamas on October 7th are crossing or have crossed back into Israel at this point after a transition through Egypt via the Red Cross. By the way, do not donate to the Red Cross in the future. They are totally compromised, but for those of you that are out there. But nonetheless, they're participating in this, but they're compromised by, it's the Red Crescent out there in the Middle East. They're compromised by the UN. The Red Cross ain't the Red Cross that your grandpappy and grandmammy knew. All right, so 13 Israeli women and children taken hostage by Hamas on 10/7, October 7th, are now crossing back into Israel. Had to Breitbart. The transition is through Egypt via the Red Cross. Friday evening local time, 12. So you got 12 Thai hostages. 1 Filipino hostage have also been freed. So there's the first look. There's the first look of vehicles that are carrying elderly and others across the Rafah border crossing. That was filmed apparently, I believe, by NPR. In return, Israel has released 39, listen to this, Palestinian terror convicts. I was talking to this about Gabe, like, why would you release terrorists? And it's a moral thing for the Jewish people. It's like, hey, this is what we said we're going to do. This is what we're going to do. We value life. So even if we're going to give up prisoners for hostages, and I want you to understand the difference. Israel is releasing prisoners, people that legitimately committed crimes in their territory in exchange for hostages, people that didn't commit crimes and were kidnapped and taken to Gazan territory. So there's the difference. That's the difference between a democracy, a civilized society, and one that is not. All right. 39 Palestinian terror convicts, all women or teenagers, have been released. It is also Israel has also allowed additional fuel trucks and other supplies into Gaza. Basically, Israel's fueling Hamas because they're going to steal all of that stuff. But they're willing to do that to get their people back. They're better people than I am. I got to be frank with you. I would have a very hard time negotiating with terrorists. And frankly, I'm not sure that they would, were it not for a weak Biden administration and a weak United States kind of forcing their hand. After a 4-day pause in fighting took effect earlier on Friday, under the terms of the agreement, now over 200 hostages do remain in custody in Gaza. Israel initially withheld the names of the hostages to be released. The names have begun to trickle out. There was a mother and daughter, Danielle Alani, or Alani, Alony, and her 5-year-old Amelia are among the freed hostages. And honestly, I always wonder what happened to these people. Just look at what they did on October 7th and in the aftermath. I mean, raping babies and women, children. I mean, burning babies alive, decapitating people. We know that Al Shifa Hospital was a kind of a hiding spot. That's where their headquarters were, and they were taking hostages underground using that hospital. It's amazing. You have Yafa Adir, an 85-year-old, one of the founders of the kibbutz near Oz, was kidnapped by Palestinian terrorists who are not from Hamas and has been kept in captivity for the last 48 days. Will be reunited with her family. You have one hostage, Hannah Katzir, had been erroneously reported by the Palestinian Islamic Jihad to have died in captivity. She was reportedly among the 13 Israeli hostages seen transferring from Gaza, Israel via the Red Cross through Egypt. The Times of Israel also reported the names and ages of the female and child hostages released and returned to Israel. You have Hani Katzer, that's 77, Margalit Moses, that's 77, Yafa Ader, that's 85, Hannah Perry, 79, Adina Moshe, 72, Danielle Aloni, and Amalia, 44 and 9, Ruthie Mundar, 78, Karen Mundar, 54, and Kad Mundar, who is 9. You have Aviv Asher, that's 2, Raz Asher, that's 5, and Doran Katz Asher, that is 34 years of age. Israel's Army radio narrated the emotional moment when the hostages, including children, boarded a white bus at the Rafah crossing that you saw on the video, thanks to Mr. Cassiano right there. So now at least 50 Israeli hostages are set to be released over this 4-day period or pause, and a total of 150 Palestinian convicts, or Gazan, because there is no Palestine, Gazan or Hamas convicts. Hamas will be allowed to extend the pause in fighting as long as it hands over an additional 10 hostages per day, up to 10 days total. So Israel would then release an additional 150 Gazan prisoners. They say Palestinian. There are a number of potential complications in the deal. According to Breitbart, Israel reportedly agreed to stop surveillance of Gaza during the 4-day pause, which would allow Hamas basically to move hostages without their locations being anticipated. So that's very scary. It would also allow Hamas to rearm in anticipation of fighting. Meanwhile, some Gazan civilians who moved south during the fighting are attempting to return to the northern Gaza Strip, which is still a war zone. Good. I hope they're killed. Hezbollah in Lebanon has at least stopped firing at Israel for now. It's not clear. It's not clear how long that'll last. The first stop for the hostages will be a military base in Israel, where they will receive medical examinations and attentions. The families of the hostages are waiting there, and as are stuffed animals and toys for the children who are going to be released. These people have gone through probably the most traumatic experience they ever will have gone through in their entire lives. I hope that Israel comes up with some sort of rendition of our Second Amendment, because what happened in that country should never happen again. People should not be able to walk into your country and kill you. Shouldn't happen. Just like the open border, fentanyl deaths are occurring all across the United States. That kind of stuff shouldn't happen. All right, guys, I appreciate you tuning in to this edition of the Carl Jackson Show podcast. Again, I hope that you had a wonderful Thanksgiving. I hope that you will continue to enjoy time with your family and that you will have safe travels. Appreciate you tuning in. Until next time, do not grow weary doing good, and God bless you.